Welcome, everyone. Dreaming of starting a new chapter in France? You are in the right place. Whether you are planning to retire in the countryside, work remotely from a cozy Parisian apartment, or just want to finally live that French lifestyle, today is all about giving you the roadmap to make it happen. We're joined by none other than Fabien from FAB Expat, one of the top relocation experts. Hi, Fabien.
Salut Frankie, hi Frankie, hi everyone.
Thank you for being with us. Fabien is going to walk us through the real life steps of moving from the US to France, getting the right visa, finding a home, navigating healthcare, working or starting a business, and yes, even bringing your car with you. This is a practical, no nonsense session packed with info. And best of all, you'll get to ask your questions live. You already have a burning question. Don't hesitate to write it in the chat. I'll be happy to have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. Fabien, we are all ears. Nous sommes tout oui.
Yes. So I again
And first,
everyone.
let me tell you, it looks like you are in a Parisian apartment. Am I right?
Well, I am. And actually I was running a bit late. I was worried because apparently there is Lola, the Brazilian president, who is right in the district where I am. It's all on
And,
lockdown basically. So
and also, they know that Fabien Pellissier is in the neighborhood, so they have to be careful as well. Security, you think it's for Brazil, it's for you. Okay,
oh,
my friend.
I only ordered champagne. That was all.
Nice. I love
I
it.
was just here for the champagne.
Do you welcome your clients with a cup of champagne, with a flute of champagne, Fabien?
Oh, well, let's say the VIP clients, yes.
Okay, nice. Okay,
I
we'll
mean,
talk
but
about that.
everyone is welcome. I'm more than happy to share a cup of coffee, glass of wine, when
And
they're in Paris.
depending on what you're spending, you will go from coffee to champagne.
That, yeah, from coffee to wine to champagne. Yeah, that's
That's normal. It's
those
an
are the
upgrade.
packages. No, no, kidding. Obviously kidding.
All right. So we have a public that is very, very interesting in learning more how you can help them relocate and do that
Yes,
big jump and moving to
yeah,
France.
yeah. Moving to France. Well, so moving to France from the US usually is all about, well, it starts with a visa for a lot of you guys. Obviously, it depends. There's some of you may have the wild card, which is being the spouse of an EU citizen or be the spouse of a French citizen. By the way, it only works if you're married. Civil partnerships or being like a long-term relationship doesn't work. Well, it does work, but not for visa purposes. So for most of you, it starts with the visa. The visa is actually, well, it's a tedious process. A lot of you dread that process, but it's easier than it looks. It very often boils down to those three pillars. I like to mention those pillars because I think it's as easy as that. They ask a bunch of questions. They want to see a bunch of documents. Yes. But what they're looking for is those three pillars. Those pillars are called proof of income, proof of address, proof of medical coverage. So they want to see that you are insured for that first year in France because you won't be part of French healthcare, public healthcare yet. You will eventually, but not yet, not initially.
Which is a big perk in moving to France,
It
especially
is.
when you come from the US.
Yes, because you have access. Most of you will have access to free public health care. You can apply after 90 days and you should get in within 6-ish months afterwards. So within the first year. But that's one pillar. The second, and this one is the easiest to meet, by the way. It's all about buying a policy, although you do need to buy a compliant insurance policy. I'll tell you, obviously, we have a branch for French insurance. We have just the right package for you, the cheapest around. But, this is all about that. So we can help with that, but this is all about buying insurance. Then the proof of income from the US is very often the easiest. It's very often the one that people are the most concerned with or confused with, but it's the easiest because it's all about showing bank statements. Okay, people are like, oh, what if I don't have social security yet? Or what if it's irrelevant? They want to see that you have either ongoing income or savings. Yes?
Okay, that was my question actually, because if you move to a different country, unless you work remotely still in the previous country, you're not getting the income you had in the
Mm.
US. So you have to show ongoing income
Could
or
could be
savings.
either or both. Could be either or both. Could be a mix of both. Could be either. So, well, some people may move to France and be like remote working from there. Well, from the US, for example, keep the job there. Then you can show your pay slips. Okay, that would work.
Okay,
But also you may have private pensions, 401ks, IRAs, or that, you name it. So you could already have income, although you don't have social security yet, for example. So it could be any source. It could also be rental income from your US properties or actually properties from abroad. It could be any of that. And by the way, France is kind of a tax haven for US expats because we do not tax rental income from the States and we in France, and we do not tax any kind of pension income. So that income from 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, obviously Social Security is going to be tax free in France.
okay, all right. And if
So
there is no such thing, you can show savings for like what, the first year?
yes, so what they want to see is that well, obviously this requirement evolves over time. It depends on an index that's voted by the state, which is basically called minimum wage in France. We call that the SMIC, and currently it sits at a bit under that, but roughly 1,450 euros net a month. Net, okay, that figure is important. So it's either you have that kind of income, okay, well, let's say $1,800 a month, or 12 times this in savings.
In an
So
account.
roughly 18,000 euros, less than that, roughly, or $20,000. Again, I'm running at the figures like a lot, but it's just to simplify the math. And that's per person, adult. Okay. Kids usually they want to see a bit more income, but basically, if you meet that per adult, you're going to be fine. Also, question are being asked often: if you're two adults, theoretically that's $40,000, but practically they apply quite a significant discount. Like $30,000 is probably going to get you through the doors. Okay. And our side could be a mix of both. So let's say, for example, you're just making like 1,000 euros, not dollars, 1,000 euros a month. So you short 450. Let's round that up to 500. You short 500, then you short 6,000 a year. Then you can top that up with 6,000 in savings.
Sure.
Okay, that could
Yeah,
be a mix of both.
could be
That
a
doesn't have to
combination.
be both, okay? Could be either or a mix of both, but doesn't have, you don't need to have both the savings and the income, okay?
Okay. And what about that third pillar, the
And
proof
the
of
third pillar
address?
is very often, especially from the US, the most problematic one. Even if that wasn't a pillar for visas, it's often the most problematic option because it's a proof of address. So you need to have a French address. So you need to have found a place in France.
Okay.
And
But there,
therefore,
there's no such thing as MLS in France. You cannot shop around online for
yes, exactly. That's the problem. It's not as standardized. I mean, France is a smaller country, so in that regard, unfortunately, no, you're right, frankly, there's no such thing. Well, there are US expats who's been in real estate, kind of provide a kind of similar level of service, but like it's not standardized in France. And so there's only, I'll tell you what's the theoretical requirement. The theoretical requirement when you want to move to France for the proof of address is either you bought a property in France, this one's obvious, it's the most expensive one,
Mhm.
a 1 year rental contract. And by the way, don't get confused by that. It is completely reversed from what you used to in the US. Okay, a 1 year contract does not commit you. I know it sounds weird, does not commit you for 1 year. You can literally sign the contract, walk away from the contract the day after you've signed it, no penalty in France. Okay,
Mhm.
you just have to respect the notice,
Of
which
course.
is either 1 or 3 months, depending on the contract. But like you have a 1 month or a 3 month notice, and that's it.
So
Why
they
do we
won't
call that
ask
a
you.
1 year contract? Because it commits the landlord to the tenant for 1 year on the other end.
Okay. So it won't ask you like when you apply for a visa, once you show these documents, if you move, if you change, if you break the lease contract, there won't be other documents during
No,
that period of time to provide.
no, you're completely allowed to change places and to change your contract or whatever. It's just that in 1 year time, if you want to extend your visa or renew it, I mean, the wording is not, they call it renewal, which I don't like. When you apply for your residence permit, they'll double check for this requirement again. So if you've broken your contract and you didn't get another one, then you're homeless. So hopefully not. But then they won't give you the residence permit. But the third option that you have that's legally visa compliant is to get a letter from a friend that says basically that they're happy with you using their address. It's called an attestation d'hébergement. That's the third option. Legally speaking, those are the only options. Practically speaking, unfortunately, we're getting a bit political here, but for the past 2, 3 years, maybe more, France has have a lot of leeways with American applicants, and you can use an Airbnb. Okay, so it's very important to understand that it's theoretically non-visa compliant, so they could turn off the switch tomorrow. But I don't want to play that fear-mongering card. Okay, it has been and probably will be accepted. I don't see the situation to change anytime soon. So because it's also dealt with on the French side, so they will accept an Airbnb application. But that's very important for me that you understand that it is not visa compliant, and it is twice as important because for visa, so for healthcare application or residency application, they will not accept an Airbnb on the other end because this is not compliant. So it can get you through the doors, but then if you move to France with an Airbnb, then very quickly, if you want to be able to apply into French healthcare, you'll need to have that permanent address. And again, it's one of those three pillars. You bought a place, 1 year contract, or a letter from a friend or family. Yeah.
Very clear.
So those are the pillars.
And the thing is, so you have to prepare let's say someone wants to move January 1st. He needs to, how long in advance he needs to plan ahead the preparation of moving in order to get these documents? When do we start the lease if you're not there and paying the rent when you're not there? Those are practical questions, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can start as early as you want. Usually for the visa, so there's different, not everything moves at the same speed. So the visa process, the perfect time frame to start the visa process is when you are 2 to 3 months from the intended arrival date. And this is very important. You need to come up with that date. It can be completely out of thin air. It's okay. So you come up with a date and then you work your way around that date. And that's very important because this date needs to be specific. It needs to be a specific date. Okay, not like early January 2026. Doesn't work. January the 14th, 2026 does work. Okay, specific date. Then you work your way backwards. Yeah, I knew it was. And so 3 months prior to that date, it's the perfect timeline to start the visa process. Perfect timeline.
Usually the people come, you see people coming 3 months before to make it physically there, or you can do it online?
No,
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 both.
online. Yeah, it's an online process. Yes. So that's a perfect admin process. For that property you want to get, so that address, it depends what you're going to do. If you want to buy, well, you definitely want to start looking around like 9 months before because it's a 3 month purchase process. So, and as it may take 3+ months for you to find the property you want, it's probably going to be at least a 6 month process to like find and buy the property. So if you want to use that for the visa, you need to leave yourself a lot of time ahead. If you want a 1 year contract, a month prior to when you need or want the address is to be advised. So if you want to start the visa process 3 months prior to the date, then that's 4 months prior to the day that you want to start this property hunt, we could say, for rentals. Knowing that, then it becomes a commercial problem. Some landlord might be happy matching your date, like January the 14th, let's say in my example, even if that's 4 months in the future. If you are moving or if you intend to go in a semi-busy area in France, let's say Nice or Paris, they probably will want you to get this started earlier, which means you're going to have to pay for a month you're not there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's commercial. It's not legal. That's what I'm saying. Okay. It becomes like a negotiation, if you like. And And then there is so insurance. This is usually the one you can, because that's usually something you can do within, well, we can do that within the day, but some
Be-
insurance might take longer. So the sooner you can do that, the better. But yeah.
Before we go into the details of insurance, I wanted to know, Fabien, do you have to wait to have the visa granted to move and come to France? Or yes, you have to show the
No,
paper
no,
when
no,
you
no. It's a
arrive.
good question. Yeah, no, I was nodding because it's a good question. No, actually, you don't. Well, you do and you don't. It's a yes and no kind of answer, because so you do not need to have the visa to move to France, because if you don't have a visa, you're still allowed to come and go to France under the Schengen rule, which is the free 90 days allowance every 180 day in the Schengen area. So unless you've been in another Schengen country and or exceeded the 90 days allowance, you can definitely move before the date. The problem is the visa process, part of the visa process involves an in-person interview in a visa center in the US, okay? And during that interview, so if you're before that interview, you can go to France and then you travel back to the US for that interview, that's no problem. But if you've been through that interview, they'll keep the originals of your passport.
Ah,
So by definition, you cannot travel abroad.
I see.
And they may, and you may receive your passport back with the visa in it and the start date of your visa matching the intended arrival date. Again, let's come back to January the 14th in my example. Then if you got the passport back earlier, you can move to France earlier. You don't need to wait for the date on your visa. It's just that you will be seen as a tourist first, and then the visa will get started.
I see.
But you need to wait to get the visa back, the passport back.
How long does sometimes it's very important to know how long you're going to be without a visa when, especially if you're a business traveler and you have business to attend to. What's
US
the
has quite a
longest?
fast turnover. Yes, it's one of the countries where it's the most, I'd say, efficient. Mm, on average, well, depends on the season. There is seasonality. On average, it's 1 week.
Mhm.
Okay, in the US, could even be under a week. Uh, but let's say plan for a couple weeks. It very rarely exceeds a couple weeks. Okay. Sometimes the problem is not really the turnover, it's to get that appointment in the visa center, because also they've changed the provider back in June, back in April, um, from VFS to TLS. And I think there's been a bit of a backlog also with a lot more Americans moving to France, which means that it is difficult to schedule the interview. Like for example, in California, they're fully booked, so you have to go to Seattle or like Los Angeles. It's fully booked nowadays. Again, I'm saying this, a couple of weeks might be different, but so look at that. Try to plan ahead if you see that, because you can start the process online and have an idea, okay, of that kind of thing. So yeah, it is seasonal.
So once do you want me to let's do it differently if it's okay with you, Fabien. Let's not wait maybe the end and be more interactive this time and take some questions. Do you need an account with a French bank before securing a rental agreement?
That's a good question. So, well, the first answer is, legally speaking, you do not need to have a French bank account. That's important to clear that out. Okay, it's not a legal requirement. It is convenient on the other hand. So, but thanks to online banking nowadays, you can use one of those. Honestly, the preferred options in the US are usually Wise or Revolut. So you can just open up a bank account with Wise or Revolut from the US, like a US bank account with Wise, for example, and wise.com. And then from there, you activate a euro wallet, and then you convert your dollars into euros, and then you can activate the option. Because, well, let me tell you this, what France wants, as most French businesses, I don't know why, it's cultural, we're in love with direct debits. A lot of providers, cell phone company, utility bills, the taxman, insurance, they all want to set up a direct debit on your bank account. So you
Very
want to have.
different from the US mentality.
Exactly. And that's why this is one of the cultural shocks. So you want to have this ability to get direct debits in euros on your bank account. But luckily, online banks like Wise, again, and Revolut, they do have this option to enable you to get what we call a SEPA, which is basically bank details that can be used for direct debits in the Eurozone. Okay.
Yeah, and one very important thing in order to understand this different mentality, you're not working on building a credit score in France. That's a
No,
totally different
actually,
approach.
there's no such thing.
Mhm.
Not at all. I mean, it's even illegal. Uh, there is one for businesses, business owners, but that's completely different from the US. And individuals, it's illegal because we would call that discrimination. So yeah.
I have a question. Marianne will excuse me if I don't ask you the question. I invite her to take an appointment with you. It's so specific, and there are so many very information in your message, Marianne. I think it's good to schedule a personal.
Yeah, or just send me an email. You can go on fabexpat.com and send your question. I'll be more than happy to review it in detail.
Cecilia asked us. She's Australian, and she wants to know if she still have could have the interview in the US or another country, or must it be in Australia because she's Australian?
Yeah, that's very interesting question because it's spot on. That there's not everyone knows about that. So you can actually, so it's a yes and no, same kind of answer. So you can schedule an interview in a visa center in either the country of residency or, well, your one of your countries of nationalities if you have more than one nationality. So let's say you have legal residence in the US, but an Australian passport, then you have a choice. You can do that in the US or in Australia. If you're just a tourist in the US and you have an Australian passport, it needs to be in Australia. You don't have a choice.
Makes sense, yeah. What is the process like to obtain a work visa? Do you need a specific employer to sponsor you, like
Uh,
in the US?
you know what? This is something I do. I shouldn't say that, but I do that pro bono quite often because the work visa, unfortunately, is probably the most tedious one to secure. There's a good reason for that. It's because you need to find a sponsor. You need to find an employer that's happy having to go through the visa process for you because it needs to sponsor you. It needs to publish an ad on France employment network called formerly Pôle Emploi, it's now France Travail. Wait for a month and then declare that there's no applicant that was suitable but you. Then ask for a work authorization. It's very tedious, okay? And then the visa process. So it is doable, but honestly, because of the process involved, well, if there is a French applicant that can get the job done, they'll just take the French applicant because it's less hassle. Okay, it's just about that. So it is completely doable. Don't get me wrong, but it is tedious and usually will scare employers off. But if you do find a sponsor, you can reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to advise and explain him, you, them, whatever, how the process goes. Yeah.
Vern is asking us to spell it the name that you gave. It's Wise. It's WISE.com,
Yeah.
and I see that you're typing at the same time the
Revolut.
answer. He wants your email as well. Um, what is the process? What are the different visas available to Americans, and which ones are eventually eligible for citizenship? Like, the equivalent of the getting the green card and then the citizenship in the US.
Mm. So they're all eligible for citizenship. Actually, citizenship is, well, it's intertwined, but it's not directly linked to any kind of particular visa or visa process. Citizenship is only linked to you being in or having been in France for 5 years in a row. Okay, so like more than 4 years. So from the fifth years onwards, in a row. Okay, if there is an interruption, then it restarts the counter. But once you've been around for 5 years, you can apply for citizenship, whatever your visa, whatever your status. Okay, well, unless you're an illegal migrant or something, but yeah, once you've been around for 5 years in a row as a legal migrant or a legal resident, you can apply for citizenship. So that's one thing. Then what are different visas? There's quite a few. So let's forget about a particular category, which is called the passeport talent, which is, it goes a bit all over the place. There's a lot of them for artists, for business entrepreneurs, business owners, and stuff like that. I'll focus on the main ones, which are like 1 year visas. I call them the regular visas. 1 year visas, and then you convert that into a 1 year residence permit. The most popular options is either one we call the visitor, which is a non-working visa, essentially. Could also be called a retiree's visa or a sabbatical visa. any kind. It does work with remote workers. There is a catch though. It might have an incidence on your taxes. So for that, I strongly recommend a consultation with a tax expert. Well, it could be me, but also, you know, like a tax lawyer or something like that. But this is compatible with remote workers, with non-workers, retirees, and so on. So this is by far and large the most popular option, the visitor visa. Then there are business types of visas. There's two. There's the entrepreneur visa and the what I like to call the consultant type of visa, which we call the profession libérale. But they're the same. It's just two different names. And those are by far and large the most popular. Also, just got me thinking about that. You can have a non-working visa, and for example, I've bought a French property and do some rentals. Unless it exceeds the threshold is currently sitting at 23,000 euros per annum, it won't be seen as a professional activity, and therefore you can apply for a non-working visa and still get some rental income and run that semi-professionally. Okay, that does work. But the most popular options is either a business type of visa or a non-working visa. Those are by far and large. The student visas, there's work visas, there's the passport talent I mentioned, artists, there's plenty, okay? But the two most popular from the US is business or visitor, definitely. Hands down, I mean, 98% would be either.
Mhm. Julia is mentioning virtual visa. Are you familiar with the?
Doesn't exist in the US, in France.
It doesn't exist.
We don't have digital nomads visas. We don't have golden visas. I mean, we do have things that could be seen as equivalent in a way, but it definitely isn't the same. Like we do have an entrepreneur visa where you can invest 30,000 in a business, or another one 300,000 in a business. Okay, so the difference is one is the entrepreneur visa 30,000. There is the passport talent entrepreneur, which is 300,000. Okay, could be seen as something similar to a golden visa, but it's not because it comes with other requirements. So it's different. Same for the digital nomad. We don't have that. Most would use the visitor visa or a work visa or a consultant type of visa. No, so we don't have that, unfortunately.
Interesting question for Marin. He or she is self-employed. So in that case, do you need to obtain a work visa in France? How is the income reported to French tax purposes?
Usually, well, it really depends on how much she's making and whatever she needs to still be able to invoice in dollars and stuff like that. But so I'll simplify. Usually you apply for a consultant type of visa and then you're self-employed from France. This is a status we call micro-entrepreneur,
Mm.
micro-entreprise. And you can invoice from France. Taxes are very low for that. And then it's probably going to be a profession libérale visa. Okay. There's other ways, but on average, it's usually self-employed. That's what they do. Yeah.
Um, could you suggest which visa would be appropriate for an author who earns money from books and a Substack newsletter?
Yeah. Well, same. Depends on how much you're making. Usually could definitely be an artist kind of visa. Okay. So it's a passport talent indeed. I think I've seen that. Um, And the good thing is for artists, they lower the bar a bit. Instead of France minimum wage, you only need to meet 60% of France minimum wage, which I didn't do the math, but well, so 60% of 1,450. Well, like, yeah, 1,426 to be accurate, but yeah.
Okay. Question from Cecilia. With 5 years in France prior to sponsorship, you can holiday through, right? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can you get and make sell art if you intend to
No, that's
use?
the one after.
Oh, Cecilia, sorry. With 5 years in France prior. Yes, not sure. Sorry, I'm not sure I understand that. So, well, but I can say this. A lot of people ask me, you know, I've been to France X amount of time, or I've been to France for that many X amount of years, X number of years before. I've had French residence permit before, etc., etc. Unfortunately, well, basically, your past does not influence any potential future visa application. So again, that's why I say continuously, because if there's been a break, well, you're back to square one in France, okay? You start over. So
Mm,
so history does not count.
okay.
Don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Mlu would like to have a little bit more specifics on the attestation d'hébergement, the friend letter as a proof of.
It's nice
Yeah.
because actually the government itself is even providing a template. Let me, only women can do two things at the same time, but let me try to multitask. Um, I can share the
How
template.
much we love women. I mean, we respect and we love women in France. This is one good reason to move there.
Yeah, you
I'm
see,
not
I mean,
saying it's not the case in the US, of course not.
uh, well, for me, this is a superpower. I mean, I'm beaten down, but I'm certain. Um, yes, okay. This is they have a generator. So I'll send, yeah. Here, Emlu, I've sent you the website. So it's a governmental website. You can look for that online. Governmental website template for attestation d'hébergement, or just letter, hosting letter or something, in Google, and you'll have the template. I've seen an interesting question about language requirements. By the way, there's a
Yes.
lot of fear mongering and misinformation around that. So there are, so first, visas, there's never going to be a language requirement for visa, okay? There's some residence permits who do come with a language test, but honestly, it's very rare that it applies to any of you, okay? There's only 3 types of residence permits who come with a language test, meaning all the other ones don't. And that's probably your case. You probably don't want to have to go through a language test, but I'll tell you those which categories are, which residence permits are affected. So again, you only have to go through a language test for your residence permit once you get to the stage of the multi-use permit. Okay, 1 year's permit do not come with a test. If you're more than 65, no test as well, whatever the, okay. And then let's say you're less than 65, and you got to the stage where you have the 5 years permit, or you can apply for the 5 years or a 10 years permit, and you're in either of those categories, then you'll have a French test. And it's spouse of a French citizen, weirdly enough, not the spouse of an EU citizen, parent of a French citizen, very specific, probably won't be your case, or another one that's called the family reunion, like you're joining a partner of your family from abroad, very specific. Okay, it's you know that from the French word, it's the droit du sol. Okay, so that's it. Those are, I mean, apart from the spouse of a French citizen, which we sometimes meet, all the others, you probably are not in that situation. So meaning, unless you're the spouse of a French citizen, there's probably never going to be a French test for you. Well, I mean, I do expect you learn French. It would make your life easier, but it's not going to be a legal requirement. Yeah.
That's it. Jennifer is asking if she buys the house in France and pay cash for it. Does she pay for the utilities, electric bill, cable, heat, water, and so on? Of course, you can use Wise, right, or
Yes.
Revolut to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
American second home owners would do that. Again, for convenience, some people will open a French bank account because actually I understand that once you have a brick and mortar foothold there, so like a property and a physical address, you can open a French bank account. I would strongly suggest BNP if you want to do that. Uh, but again, Wise and Revolut would get the job done nowadays, so I'll take go with them. Yeah.
Vern is asking if you can get French health insurance with a 1 year visa obtained. So basically, he's not mentioning the health insurance that is a requirement, the proof of health insurance, the private health insurance. I guess he's talking about government health insurance. How long does it take to get
So,
it?
yes, public healthcare, it takes like 9-ish months to get. So 3-month waiting period for you to apply once you've moved to France. And then again, 6-month processing times, which you'll need to privately supplement thereafter. And we call that a mutuelle, like a mutual, literally, but in French, mutuelle. And that the mutual is significantly cheaper from what you've been used to, and so much better than anything you have in the US. For example, mutuals, there's no deductible. You everything is refunded It's the state, not the insurance company, who dictates what should be refunded or not. So it's completely different. And it costs like, I don't know, someone in their 50s is going to cost less than 50 euros a month, for example, just to give you an idea. Okay. Like way less, like 40 something probably. Yeah.
Cecilia is being more specific. She said what she meant was during the 5 years you need to stay for the citizenship. Can you go outside?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You're in
Are you
France,
in
not in
jail?
jail.
Are you in jail in France?
No, no, you're not in jail in France. No worries. Actually, that's a very common mistake we see on visa applications where people would because there's a what I consider a trick question on those forms. They ask you, how much time do you intend to spend in France? This is exactly what they say. They're like, how much time? And people are like, and there's an option that says 6 to 12 months and another that says 12 plus month. Okay. And a lot of people attempted to say 6 to 12 because they'll be traveling around. They don't want to lie. Okay. Uh, big mistake. If you do intend to stay potentially for more than 1 year, you want to check 12 plus month, because if you say 6 to 12, it means you do not intend to seek tax residency potentially, and it makes your visa non-renewable. You cannot apply into French healthcare. Basically, you'll have to go back to the US to
Wow.
reapply. And you were
So
just being
that's
honest, and actually you fell in a trap. Yeah.
so that's you're giving us one of, there are so many reasons, but that's one reason. If you don't check the right box, that's where you need experts like you, because I wanted to make a
Because you end
post.
up with a non-renewable visa, and that's a big deal. Then you
It's
have
a
to go
big deal.
back.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't know how to fill out the forms and everything. So let's make a quick pause. And before we move forward, and we're going to go to the second stage, which is you have a visa, you're in France, you need the carte vitale. How do you do with your car, the driver's license, all these kind of things we're going to discuss in a minute. But before that, I wanted you, Fabien, to tell us basically um, how are you involved in the process? How do you take care of your clients
Oh,
along
me
the way
personally,
on
yeah.
specific things? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's three ways I can be involved. The first one is my so it's my life mission now to help as many people. We help roughly 2,000 people make it to France every year. And so I do offer consultations with me, free and paid consultations. Obviously, the free ones are like high on demand. That is like a couple of months, 3 month backlog. But I do offer free consultations, VIP consultations for those who want to have a faster turnaround and be able to speak with me
And
quicker.
champagne when they arrive.
Champagne works as well. Yes, that is part of the VIP treatment. Um, Also, then I have a vast network, like more than 160 providers we work with. We've been doing this for more than a decade now. So during the consultation, I like to think I'll give them a completely unbiased, or as unbiased as it gets, advice on everything visa and moving to France related, even like where to live in France, how to get into French healthcare, everything. I've been on the board of CPAM, which is French healthcare. I've been on the board of UOSAF. My stepdad was an MP for 25 years in France. So I've seen a lot of admin stuff, and I like to give the unbiased advice. And then, well, they can do that on their own, and I'm more than happy to support them for free. Or obviously, I can introduce them to people who can help and come up with a full relocation package. And, it could be a one-stop shop, or just, me slash us supporting their journey to France. We're more than happy either way, because there's one thing I might be a bit biased with. It's insurance, because we do have a branch that sells that, and it's mandatory part of the process. So we think, and as we have the cheapest policies, we think, well, we should at least work for the insurance, together. So everything else we're 100% unbiased though. But I do not sell insurance myself, as I hand over to the FAB French insurance branch. So that's why I like to think I'm unbiased. Yeah.
So
Hopefully it answers the question.
yeah, yeah. Just to respond to, I think you did, just to answer to the person who just arrived and joined late. Of course, this webinar is recorded. There will be a replay published on frenchly.us, so you will be able to listen to it again even more carefully if you had to pick up the phone during the webinar or something like that, if you don't want to miss anything. Last question from John before we move a little bit further, and then we'll keep asking the questions. John is saying he's looking to rent a furnished place in France for a year, perhaps Airbnb, and he's concerned that if for whatever reason he cannot get the visa, then
Hmm.
he'll be on the hook for paying the rental. Well, basically, you mentioned that you can break pretty easily a lease in France, right?
Yeah, so Airbnb in France, because of French regulations, no one will Airbnb you for more than 3 months, okay, even more than 2 months. Because as per the law in France, if you're renting to someone for more than 3 months, they become a legal tenant. Okay, they can squat there basically forever.
Hmm.
So no one would do that. Okay, it's too much of a risk. But that being said, so that's why then you can have those 1 year contracts I've mentioned, and it's pretty much the only thing that people can do in France. It's the only contract. Well, there's 1 or 3 years contract, but the 3 years is a 3 times 1 year anyway. So which, like we were saying, is gonna come with, if it's a furnished place, it's gonna come with a 1 month notice. So worst case scenario, you're tied for 1 month.
Okay. So let's say that we have now the visa. We're in France. What are the different aspects that we need to take care of, and where you can get involved and support?
Yes. So you mentioned the driver license or driving in France. So, well, obviously it depends where you're going. If you're going to Paris, you probably won't need to drive. Then other places, maybe. Again, depends where you're going. This is very, very, very often overlooked because driving in France uh, is not as easy as it sounds. I mean, it is. Driving is not a problem. The problem is the driver license. And again, a lot of people realize that once they've moved, which very often could be a very unpleasant surprise. The problem is France has only agreements, driver license exchange agreements with 18 states in the US. Actually, you can go on fabexpat.com. I've created an article about that, and then I have like a nice infographic with all the US states, and you can see those with an agreement and those who don't. It's completely non-political, okay? Like Texas has an agreement, California doesn't, okay? Um, but it could make a lot of difference, okay? If you come from a state that doesn't have an agreement, it means you won't be able to exchange your license in France. So if you want to drive, so your US license will only be valid for 1 year. And then after 1 year, if you want to keep on driving, then it means you'll have to go through the test again as if you're a teenage boy or girl. Okay. So this is a big deal. Otherwise, you can also anticipate on that. This is actually a trick that a lot of Americans are pulling, and it's completely legal, by the way. But like if you know you're from a state that doesn't have agreements and like you're going to retire anyway, well, you can move like virtually. You can move to another state, like you have your uncle or some family member or even friends that live in a state. You do have an agreement, then
Could
you
it
can
be
reach out to the IRS, get your address to that state, reach out to the DMV, get the license there, and then move to France, and you'll get an exchangeable license.
could it be a PO box, or
Now, PO boxes are not
it
accepted, unfortunately.
won't be
Well,
worth?
it's
Yeah.
because of the DMV. The DMV in the US won't accept that.
All right. Yeah.
And
Interesting.
also good to know, the DMV is not like a monolith, okay? The rules depends, well, I mean, you probably know that, but each state might have different rules. For example, Texas wants you to have been there for 6 months. So even if you're using someone else's address, you have to wait 6 months until you can request that Texan license. Illinois, on the other hand, they have a direct license exchange agreement. So it could be instant. Okay. So have a look into that. I'm not saying this is the answer, but if you can get that done, it definitely could help you get an exchangeable license. Obviously, you might be coming from a state like South Carolina or Florida that has have the agreement, or Colorado, okay? And then you don't have the problem, or Texas. But it is important to have a look into that if you do intend on driving in France. I'm saying this and emphasize on this strongly because for me, this is also a key thing to factor in when considering where to live in France. Because if you know you won't be able to drive there, well, it might influence where you're going to live because then I would not advise living in the countryside, for example, if you can drive.
Right.
Okay.
Linda has a good question. If you don't intend to get a French driving license, how long can you rent a car on your American driving license? Is it a year or?
Yeah. This one, okay, well, it's recorded, but let's say I didn't say that. So theoretically, yes, it's just 1 year. It's just valid for 1 year past residency.
But
Practically speaking, the
how
leasing
do you
company
know?
won't mind as long as it's short-term lease. They won't mind, so you can do that forever. Yeah,
I don't understand, Fabien. How do you know when that year
that's what
starts?
I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The lease company won't.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
So that's what I'm saying. Theoretically, 1 year, but practically,
Okay.
say,
I got you. Does the exchangeable driver's license last the same years as the US license, or it's a
No
new one?
more. Once you get a French license, you'll get a 10-year license for, actually it's 20 years now. Yeah.
What about bringing your car from the US to France? Is that
Actually,
something?
we have a dedicated service for that. So my friend, my dear friend and business partner, Alex, deals with that. He will run an assessment for free, basically kind of estimating, is it worth importing the vehicle or is it better to just buy a vehicle? And we even have a service where you can buy the vehicle for you. So you get the French price, and then we can even deliver that. Like it's 500 euros. We deliver that with the chauffeur to the airport, Charles de Gaulle, for example, if you land there. And like you have the chauffeur waiting for you with your own vehicle. That's the kind of service we provide. Yeah.
That's nice. What are the biggest cultural or logistical surprises Americans face when moving to France? You've been doing this for almost a decade. You must have some crunchy stories about.
Yeah. Healthcare. I mean, with private medical insurance, we renew like 15% of our policies, and that should be zero. So a lot are actually baffled by this. Like this, despite us telling that as often as and as loudly as we can, I think a lot of American expats don't realize they can legally apply after 90 days into French healthcare for free. So very often is something I would say they don't even believe, but that's true. The quality of life and the quality of food, sorry, well, quality of life as well, but the pace of life. The pace of life is a double-edged sword. I mean, it's for me, it's all benefits, but it's something to factor in. It is slower in France, which for me is good, but also, well, then, as you can expect, it is not as fast paced as it is in the US most of the time. Meaning, when you're reaching out to the bank, the insurance company, the mairie, city hall, or the public services, they might be on holiday or it's like 5 p.m. and they're going out in a couple of minutes, and then there's a backlog they need to process before, and they're going to be, or maybe they're on strike, or so
The
everything takes
lunch,
longer.
the
Yeah,
business lunch. You have to understand that
two
business
hours.
is a few hours. Yes.
Well, one is the minimum.
Yeah.
And two is quite, I mean, my employee, they have a 2 hours lunch break. This is normal.
And don't be surprised if your partner or your client drinks wine, orders a bottle of wine for lunch. Don't be
Well,
surprised.
it's kind of typical, yes, yeah. So we have that kind of restaurant we call the routier for like truckers. That they all have wine during a second, and then they open the truck. Yeah, but but also the benefit of that slower pace of life. Well, first, it's a slower pace of life, so you get to enjoy things. Something I like to say, when we're with someone, okay? Like there's something I very rarely see in France, like that I do in the UK or the US, where like we start a meeting and the guy would be like, okay, we have half an hour, we have an hour.
Yeah.
Well, you usually never hear that in France. Like I'm with you, okay? And then
I'm going to give you another example. When my kids are invited to a birthday, we know that it's going to be from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. There's no such thing in France. You're invited at 4. You never know at what time it's going to
yeah,
end.
it could be done to 2 p.m. Yeah, 2 a.m. Sorry.
2 a.m. Right. So the relationship with time is pretty different. I know that you were a few weeks ago in New York City, Fabien. So you were mentioning fast-paced cities. Of course, the pace of living in a city like New York or the largest city in the US, there is definitely a contrast. Even in Paris, Paris doesn't go as fast as New York City.
Oh no, no,
It
oh no, it doesn't.
it
The
doesn't.
1 hour lunch break in Paris is common as well. Yeah, and in Paris, it's the fastest paced city in France.
Right, in
Now,
France.
so like for example, this couple of things you pretty much never see a French native do is like walking and sipping his coffee in a cup. Like that's probably not a French guy who does that. Like we have to sit to drink the coffee, or eating and walking as well. And that actually you mentioned New York. That's a funny anecdote. Like last time I was in New York, I was having a business meeting and it was getting close to midday. So to yeah to lunch, and the guy was like, okay, well, let's grab something. We were heading to a food truck. And well, I understand we were heading towards a food truck, and then I understood as well that he was basically about to buy the food and then well, hit it on the way back to the office. And at some point, I had to stop him. I was like, well, I don't mind the junk food or the fast food. It's okay with me, but I need to sit. I'm too French for that. I cannot hit and walk. I don't multitask.
That's interesting. That's funny. That's so true as well. So, all right, can we do like a recap, Fabien, of all the different areas, expertise that you can help our viewers with in their preparation to move?
Yeah, I like to joke about that. I like to say, you can see me as your immigration doctor. I don't have a PhD, but I'm literally like a general practitioner. Okay, I've been doing this for 10 years. Again, I've been on the board of various administrations in France, and we've seen thousands of applications every year ever since. So, well, not all Americans, just to be fair. Okay, there's Brits, there's Australians, there's also, but especially nowadays, 70% of our clients are Americans. Okay, so there's a big chunk of Americans. And so we can even fly dogs on private charter jets. Okay, so it goes way beyond just the visas or insurance. And so so we have again more than 160 partners we work with. So I've seen the questions like, okay, we help with real estate. Okay, we have people who can help with renovations, with finding a property for purchase or finding a property for rentals. Okay, so we have partners we work with for pretty much everything and anything. Very often it starts with a conversation and a consultation, because again, that's the first thing is I like to know, what you're supposed to be getting into or what you're supposed to do. Once you understand that, and well, then if you want a hands-off approach, okay, we'll hook you up with the right professionals, or we can do that with some of that ourselves. We have a concierge service, for example, so that it's a complete hands-off approach. Okay, the concierge service is basically you'll have a dedicated relocation manager. It takes care of the everything. It will liaise with the different people involved. That's it. You don't have to worry about anything. Or you can do that on your own, or you can just buy a la carte. Okay, so again, immigration doctor, I think, is the thing that sums it up the most.
It's a
Yeah.
good term, and you look like a little bit like Dr. House in a way. So it sounds good, Doctor. I love it. And
Hopefully, it's friendlier.
yeah, yes. And I wanted one question that is very practical, and that would be, I guess, the last one. Um, in terms of cost, give us a ballpark. How much does it cost to have someone, an expert, a doctor like you, next to you along the journey to help you optimize the
Um,
process and do it
yeah.
right?
So again, it depends who we work with, because we work with so many partners. We have again VIP packages, regular packages, and cheap packages. Well, I'll give you the average. Okay, it could be cheaper, it could be more expensive. I'll give you the average. A full relocation package for a couple usually is around 6,000 euros. That's the average. Okay, so 3,000 each, we could say. Full relocation means visa activation, healthcare application, and then the residency permits. It's a more than 1 year package. Okay.
Okay.
Um, well, obviously, if you want a vehicle, if you there's other stuff we can be added up.
You know, I paid 10 times that before becoming a US citizen, just to let you
Yeah,
know.
so okay. But well, also this is very important actually that you mentioned that, because this is a very famous French saying. You probably know that, Frankie. This one, there's a saying in France, when something looks too expensive, we could say, "Tu me prends pour un Américain?" Like, do you think I'm an American? Because
Right.
we think basically Americans are all millionaires or something. And
Right.
when the French interact with Americans, they tend to increase the prices. We don't do that, and we work with people which will charge you the French price. That's also why you'll get a fair price. I'm not saying it's necessarily cheap, it's just a fair price. Insurance is another thing you need to factor in. Well, obviously depends on your age. The ballpark price, again, I'm considering someone late 50s, let's say, it's going to be 2,000 euros. Again, could be cheaper if you're younger, obviously, or more expensive if you're older. Depends.
What when you say 2000, what is it? It's not the package, it's the
Now
cost
the insurance, that's needed as well.
itself. What is it? A yearly cost?
Yes, yeah, 1 year. Yeah.
Okay. No, but
Yeah,
we
of
are
course.
used to, no, no, of course, but some people have insurance of 2000 per month in the US.
You're
So
right. You're right. Yeah, yeah. Good point.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's interesting. Did we forget to mention something? I want to mention something important. You know, we do a lot of webinars on Frenchly and French Morning. I've known Fabien for quite some time now. He's becoming a friend of mine. He is a friend of mine now. And honestly, it's also very good to have the ability to speak to a French man who speaks fluently English. And it's not so usual. I mean, there are many people who think they are fluent in English, in French, and you might have a hard time having a discussion with them. So this is a very
When
strong
it gets
point.
technical, yes.
Yeah, when it gets technical, absolutely. So thank
Yeah,
you,
and you can
Thomas.
very easily be lost in translation. You know, for example, a pro tip, I mean, for those of you who want to engage with friends and the French language, this is a very dangerous language. Like you don't want to be excited in French because it means aroused if you translate that. So be careful with French words as well, you know.
But
So
be aroused. If you move to France, be more aroused than you were before. It's the opportunity, not France.
well,
Uh,
you know the kind of message you're sending across. Yeah.
no.
So
We're gonna edit that part. Okay. Thank you so much,
well, I
Fabien.
did a mistake back in the day, like a few years ago. I remember doing this mistake as well. I don't remember the context, but telling a lady, she was in her 60s or 70s, that I'd be happy servicing her, which
Wow.
apparently means going down there. So I didn't know. I don't see the logic, but
So
I
be
understood
very
it was
careful.
not what I
Yes.
meant. Yeah.
Be very careful. Yeah, avec les faux amis. That's how we call them. Idioms in both languages. Um, how do we reach you? Of course, you know what? We're gonna do the things the other way around this time. We are thinking differently. Each and every one of you will receive an email from Fabien in the coming days that will include a replay of this webinar as well as the different links in order to get in touch with him. I want you to mention for the people who will see this in the replay the contact where they can reach you, the website probably.
Yes. So the easiest to get in touch with is fabexpat.com, or if you want to have a look at insurance, is fabfrenchinsurance.com. Okay, those places are
Fab,
the best.
FAB, French.
Yeah, like fabulous, hopefully.
Oh, yes, like fabulous. That's the last word of this webinar. Fabulous. Thank you, everyone, for being there. Thank you, Fabien, for always being here to
Merci.
give us the right
Merci tout le
advices.
monde.